Republican State Representative Matt Shaheen of Prosper. Thank you so much, and welcome back to Eye on Politics.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So your thoughts on the fact that Plano, Highland Park, and Irving and Farmers Branch have all decided that they're going to hold elections this spring for the communities, their residents, to decide whether to withdraw from DART.
Yeah, this is a reflection on the failure of DART. We've been trying for 6 years to work with DART to come up with some kind of a financial accommodation that works with Plano, but some of these other cities that are putting way more money in that they're receiving in services, and DART's refused to work with us. So this is totally on DART. DART has failed the region, and so we'll see how these elections go, but I think DART may very well be gone in a couple years.
But doesn't that concern you in the sense that here is this, 40-year-old agency that really runs a good chunk of the transportation in our region, and yet it could be, going forward, it may not be able to exist, or at least exist as strongly as it has.
Well, I'm concerned about the commuters and the people that rely on transit to get to work, get home, go shopping, and the like. I'm very concerned about them. Again, this is a reflection on DART's failure. DART has failed those citizens. But look, you look at Plano, they have alternatives that they're considering. Even a service where they leverage Uber. And it's about a tenth of the cost that they're paying into DART. DART, they're paying over $120 million into DART and getting maybe $40 million, $44 million worth of services. They could do an Uber arrangement for all these individuals that are currently relying on transit, relying on buses, and it actually would be a better service for those individuals.
And I was going to ask you about that because, they've got this election called for. In Plano's case, they're still talking to DART, and DART is reviewing the city's latest proposal. But, are you going to, if in fact there is still going to be election, let's say they can't work it out, are you urging Plano to have a plan B in place so that voters can see what the alternative is?
Oh, absolutely. I've talked to the mayor, I've talked to other city council, I've talked to their staff, and they are very much looking at alternatives. Plano is very much focused on the individuals that rely on DART, both the people that live in Plano and people that live outside of Plano but come into Plano to work. They're very focused on that. And again, one of the things that they're looking at is an Uber alternative, which would be way less expensive and a much greater service for those individuals that need that type of transportation. But look, they're still negotiating and talking with DART, so maybe something will come out of that. I'm personally not very optimistic of that because DART, quite frankly, has failed this region. They've refused to sit down and work with us in a very collaborative way, and this is totally 100% on DART. This is DART's failure.
Why do you think the agency had, that's pretty tough stuff against the agency, but why do you feel as if this has happened this way?
I have no idea. I am perplexed by it. They have fought us as far as just our efforts for more transparency. We came out with this report, this study that showed the disparity as far as the number of dollars that the cities were putting in versus receiving in services. DART fought us on just having that type of transparency. And now that it comes to light, they won't fix the problem. I'm incredibly frustrated with DART. They have let our region down, they've let these commuters down, and this is 100% on them.
Do you think the city of Dallas had anything to do with that?
No, look, DART has its board, it has their city representation and the like, and so I'm not quite sure what the city of Dallas is thinking. If I were them, I would be very nervous though. But even if you look at
why should Dallas be nervous?
Because you look at the ridership, the majority of the ridership comes from there. So DART's first, you have Plano second, Irving is third as far as the amount of dollars that go into the system, right? So if you have Plano and Irving, and then you have Farmers Branch and Highland Park withdrawal, well over $200 million is going to be taken out of the DART system. I don't understand how DART survives that. So if I was Dallas, I'd be nervous about that.
And let's take a look at Plano's latest offer, which is they want to keep the rail, they want to end most bus service, and in exchange, they want to ultimately get back half of their yearly contribution on the penny sales tax. What do you think of that idea?
Well, Plano is being more generous than maybe I would be, but look, at the end of the day, Plano's looking at the numbers, Irving's looking at the numbers, and I have full faith and confidence in the city of Plano and their leadership to come up with an arrangement that will work for the individuals that are reliant on transit. But in my opinion, they're being very generous with DART right now.
So you would give less. You'd want more back, in other words.
If I was running the show, I would just hold that election and leave this totally up to the citizens of Plano. I would tell them that there's probably an opportunity for property tax relief if this passes, and I would tell them that there's going to be a much better service for the individuals that today have to ride on DART. They have to go to a station, wait however long, and then take the DART to another station and then figure out how to get to their end destination, where now they can use Uber. Uber picks them up in 5-10 minutes and they go to the door where they need to ultimately be. It's a better service for the individuals that today rely on DART, and it's much less expensive for the city of Plano, and they could pass some of that as property tax relief for the citizens of Plano.
Going forward, what do you think the answer is? I mean, as far as like the whole region is concerned.
Well, I think, so some of the cities are going to have to make a decision whether just being part of DART makes sense or not. There's a argument that says it doesn't make sense for Plano financially, and I've laid out the fact that there's this Uber alternative. I think the other cities will have to make that decision whether that makes sense or not. I think Dallas needs to figure something out to make DART sustainable. But again, it's a matter of sitting down with DART and figuring out what that is, and DART just doesn't seem to be very creative. I mean, people are talking about, at a minimum, reducing the bus sizes. I mean, who sees a DART? When's the last time you saw a DART bus that was full of people? I mean, you could get a DART bus that's probably a third of the size just based on the ridership, much fewer buses. And so at the end of the day, look, I think a city like Dallas, I think their approach is going to be much different than a Plano or Irving or a Highland Park for sure.
And then talk to me a little bit about just the region, because we spoke to the head transportation planner for the North Texas region, Michael Morris.
Sure, yeah.
And he said, you know, part of his job, or really one of their big focuses, is how do they take our area now, which has 8.5 million people, and it's expected to grow to 12.5 million
Sure.
people by 2050, which is not that long away.
That's
I mean,
right.
it's 25 years away. Sounds like a lot, but for planning purposes, it may not be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of people, 4 extra million people.
Absolutely.
Which most areas don't even have. And we're going to grow
Right.
by that much.
Yeah.
So when you look at it from that aspect,
Mm-hmm.
is this a big concern, or do you think that this may be, you know, perhaps a blessing in disguise to try to think about the future?
I think DART is what taxi cabs used to be. They got replaced with something way more convenient. It did a much better job of accommodating the transportation demands of a region. And so look, I think at the end of the day, again, I think the city of Dallas might need to do something with respect to DART. But I think the region as a head, I think the region would be much better off if you have all your different suburbs, like a Plano, like a Irving, do something, we're doing an approach where you're using just modern technology, modern transportation approaches, and that's Uber. I mean, heck, with Elon Musk, we might have flying cars in 10 years, so who knows what the picture's going to look like. But another failure with DART is they just haven't looked at the future and how does their transit system work in the future. And they're just failed, they've fallen behind, and they're really the taxi cab of what we used to be in place before Uber.
So let's also talk about what's going on with the redistricting case.
Yeah.
The U.S. Supreme Court has it now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, how confident are you that your Texas maps that the Republicans drew, you voted for them,
Yep.
are going to stick?
I'm highly confident that we're going to do well with the U.S. Supreme Court. If you look at those maps, right, out of the 5 maps, 4 of them are a majority minority. They're a majority Hispanic population in those maps. If I was the Democratic Party, I'd be really nervous right now, the fact that the Republicans are actually drawing majority Hispanic seats with the anticipation that Republicans are going to win. And so, look, at the end of the day, I think our maps are going to be upheld, but we'll wait and see. We'll probably find out in the near future. It's my hope that this gets resolved sooner rather than later, because the March primaries are not too far away.
Any concerns that everybody else will be impacted by this, as far as, like, if you're running for re-election?
Sure.
And any concern that perhaps your race, you know, anything except Congress would be forced to, you know, delay the primary, or do you think it would be just impacting the congressional races if there's a delay?
It does make things interesting, right? And so the scenario out there where primaries are delayed would be disruptive. I would prefer that not to happen, because at the end of the day, we've got November. And look, November's a midterm. And so typically the party that's in the White House doesn't do all that well in a midterm November election. So my preference would be, let's establish who our Republican team is sooner rather than later. Let's get that done in our March primary, and there'll be some runoffs on that. But if it gets delayed, that places some seats at risk, I believe, in November.
Which ones?
Well, who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But there's some seats out there that are probably tighter than others if you look at both state legislature seats as well as congressional. So I think the sooner we can put our team in place and each of those candidates can get prepared and have the funding and the message and reaching out to individual voters to earn their trust, the sooner we do that, the better the Republican Party is, and of course, the better the state of Texas is.
What happens if the Supreme Court sides with the lower court ruling?
Well, then things are going to go back to the way they were, and we'll just have to run those races and be prepared for that. And look, I believe the individuals that would run, the Republicans that would run for those seats under the old scenarios, they'll just do the best job that they can. But in my opinion, you're harming a lot of the Hispanic community that wants the representation that they want. 4 out of 5 of those seats are majority Hispanic. And the fact that Republicans would win those seats, I think we're depriving those individuals of the representation that they want if we flip back to the old seats.
All right, we shall see. State
Yes, sir.
Representative Matt Shaheen, thank you so much.
Thanks, I appreciate you.
We appreciate it.